Today we're taking a look at my entire knife collection. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. You guys crushed the like goal on that last knife video, so as promised, I am bringing you guys an update of my entire knife collection. Some of these actually are not even knives, they're just sort of like in the same type of category. But just like before, I'm going to give a brief rundown of everything that I have now, basically everything that has some sort of bladed edge on it. And things have definitely changed a lot since I have last given you guys an update on something like this. Now, I'd say that I've done dedicated videos to about half of what I'm going to show you. So I will let you know if I've done a video on these when I'm going through them, and if you want to check them out, I will leave a link to my knife playlist in the description down below. Now, I have this fancy new case to hold everything that I own right now, but we're going to talk about the stuff on the outside of that case first, and we're going to jump into the fixed blade category of knives that I own right now. First up, we might as well start with this one because it is a prototype and this is coming into production here hopefully pretty soon. And this is the Travax Field Knife, the Trek. This is a super minimal style fixed blade. This one happens to be in 440C, and like I said, this is just a prototype. I did do a full video on this, so if you want to check it out, go look at that playlist down in the description below. Now, this thing has been sitting on my desk for the past couple of weeks after I made the video on it, and I use it occasionally, but I have not been carrying this yet because the sheath that they sent me comes in the vertical carry. I prefer horizontal if I'm going to have this thing on my belt. So for now, this is just in the testing phase, but once the actual knife comes out, I think I might actually give this thing a try. And I say give this thing a try, meaning like I might actually try to carry it for a week or so and see if I can actually live with a fixed blade like this. I'm hoping to get the final production version of the S35VN steel that they're using. And then again, I want the combo carry sheath, so hopefully I can keep this thing nice and tight along my belt line. So that's the prototype. Now moving on to the next one. Here I have my all-time favorite fixed blade knife if I'm going out into the woods or going camping, which I don't do a whole lot. I'm trying to get out there a little bit more. But if I'm going to take any fixed blade knife with me, it is going to be this thing right here, the SE6. There are so many things that I love about this knife. It is big enough and thick enough that you can beat the hell out of it. You can baton through logs if you want to. It has a nice finger choil up in the front here. The micarta handles. This is one of the knives that made me fall in love with micarta. The ergonomics are just so good. It feels awesome in my hand. It has a very durable coating on the blade. I have actually beat on this knife pretty good, and as you can see, there is a little bit of wear on there. The blade steel they use is not the most corrosion resistant, but if you're using this as like a survival knife, it typically is not that bad. I don't actually remember the last time that I used this knife, but it seems like I put a decent edge on there, so this thing should be pretty damn sharp and ready to use whenever I need it. It's got a little lanyard tie on there, and then of course the included sheath. This thing is also vertical carry, so it just sort of sits on the side of your leg. And for a knife this size, something that you're going to be carrying outdoors with you, I am okay with that. Now, since I like the SE6 so much, I also went out and bought an SE3. Now this one is almost identical, same micarta, it's just a little bit smaller all around. Now if you take a close look at this knife, you can probably tell that I have not used it at all. This was just an impulse buy, and I love the 6 so much that I decided to pick this one up. Again, the ergonomics on this thing feel great in my hand. It has a little finger choil up in the front there so you can do some detail work. If you are looking for a fixed blade to take to a campsite with you or go backpacking, SE makes awesome stuff. Their warranty is incredible. And then most of them come with an included sheath like this. I love the black, all black everything. This one you can position in different ways. You could strap it to the side of a backpack or something like that. And it also has that clip on there. So those are my favorite fixed blades. I love SE products. Can't say enough good things about them. Now, speaking of outdoor stuff, I never really showed this in my last collection update, but I've had this thing for a while. This was actually a birthday gift from a very close friend of mine, and this is the SOG Fast Hawk. Comes with this little button sheath sort of thing on the top there, and as you can probably tell, this thing has definitely been used. On the back here is a spike if you need to like break up any rocks or anything. On the side it has a little bit of knurling if you want to hammer something in like tent stakes. And then it has a pretty decent sized edge on here. You can definitely chop up timber or anything that you might need. I have cut down small trees with this, but for the most part I just use this thing to kind of throw around. This is a legit tomahawk that you can chuck into trees, and it's fun to just sort of walk around the woods and try to get this thing to stick. This thing has been slammed around all over the place, and I'm surprised that the lockup, if you want to call it that, is still super tough. There is absolutely no wiggle room between the head of this axe and the polymer-ish handle. I'm not exactly sure what this is made out of. So SOG definitely makes a solid tomahawk. They actually make some smaller than this as well. And if I was going out camping and I knew that I needed to chop some stuff down, maybe to start a fire, this is definitely one that I would take with me. That's about it for the outdoor fixed blade type of stuff, but I also have 3 more that you guys may have seen here on the channel in the past. Here I have a few different variations of the Colonel blades. I'll start off with this one, which I've shown in a video in the past. This is the Italian version, G10 handles. The ergonomics on these things are just killer. I am definitely a big fan of them. This is something that I tried to experiment with when carrying like an EDC type of roll, and I have actually used this thing in its supplied sheath before, but for the most part this is absolutely a self-defense weapon. With just a little bit of training you can be super effective with these things, and it is very cool to actually see these put in use in training classes. So not only do I have that Italian version, but I have this one, which they actually sent me. This one is very similar. It is the Italian version with the nice grippy G10 handles, but this one is actually a dagger, so it has an edge on each side of the blade, and of course it does have that multicam Cerakote on there, so that is another very cool option coming from Colonel Blades. They do limited runs of these from time to time, so if you want to check them out, you'll have to keep an eye on their social media or on their website. This one comes with the Coyote or FDE type of sheath in here. The thing fits great. You can reverse that clip if you need to, and you can cant it in different directions. This is a very useful tool, and I also have another variation. This right here is a G10 version of the Colonel blade, and this entire knife, if you want to call it that, is made out of G10. There is no metal in this blade at all. The handle is wrapped in sort of this leather twine type of material. It is super lightweight, and it has the same ergonomics as all of the other knives. They do sort of grind a blade into here. I mean, it's not going to really cut anything, but this is mainly for stabbing anyway. I have seen tests of these things being slammed through metal trash cans and all sorts of craziness. G10 is a very strong material, and this is just a very cool option coming from Colonel Blades. It definitely fits into some specific type of rolls. I did cut down the plastic sheath that it came with. That way I can actually fasten this thing down into one of my Vertex bags. And yeah, super slim, super lightweight. It's like that thing is not even on you. So now we are getting into the good stuff, all of my folders, the knives that I actually carry and use most often. Now, if you're comparing this collection video to my last one, you will see a massive change here. A couple months back, I was looking at all of the knives that I owned, and I was just like, man, I don't use like half of these. A lot of them are junk and they're just cheap. They're blades that I had as gifts, or they were blades that I don't even really know how I came into possession of them. But I had all these different knives that really meant nothing to me. They were ones that were never going to be used ever again. So I ended up selling off a large majority of my collection, probably like 75% of all the knives that I owned. Anything that was just really beat up, cheap, junk, Chinese stuff, I basically threw that stuff in the trash. And then I was just keeping everything in either a box or a Blade HQ roll-up thing. That could fit about 12 or 16 blades, I believe. And I decided, since I was getting rid of a lot of the lower end stuff in my collection, I wanted to step up the protection of the knives. I don't want them to corrode, and I want to keep them just overall safer, since I was getting into some more high-end pieces. So that is when I decided to pick up this Seahorse case. This is the Seahorse 530. This may look very similar to my pistol case, which is sitting back there. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that video, but I will leave a link for that right up here actually. So this is basically a scaled down version of that. Here you can see the depth of it. It is relatively small case, but it holds a lot. Has a super robust handle on here. It sort of locks into place when you slap it down like that. It has points to lock this thing up. It also has turning latches on here. That way you can lock them without actually using a physical lock. Simply pop those open, flip up the latches. And then this model actually came with the pick and pluck foam. I picked out every little piece of foam in here, and it turned out to work out perfectly to hold 32 knives. It holds 32 knives in this configuration. It was actually super simple to do, and I'm just really glad the way it turned out. Now we're gonna run through these one by one. Some of these you guys may have seen dedicated videos on, others you might not have. So I'll give you a rundown of what they are and then a little bit of a story behind each of them. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that this case is only like 65, 70 bucks. So if you're interested in a knife case, definitely check these out. All right, first up in the collection is this old thing. I had this longer than any knife here, actually. I remember growing up as a kid, this used to be in my dad's tool chest, and it is a little folding knife. It's basically like a little camp tool coming from a company known as Colonial. I really don't have a whole lot of information on this knife, but as you can see, it has a little blade up here, can opener, and a fork and spoon on each end of it. It's got a little thing for a lanyard here, or if you want to put it on a keychain maybe. This is just a super cool little folding knife here. It could probably use a little bit of restoration. This blade has definitely seen better days in its life, but this is definitely one that has stuck with me, and I will never get rid of it because it was passed down to me. So that is actually my only traditional style knife in this entire collection. I probably will change that here in the future though. Next up, I have the good old Gerber Paraframe. You guys may have seen me talk about this knife on my episode of Knife Banter with Blade HQ. There's not a whole lot to say about it. It's a cheap knife. It is a frame lock design, good pocket clip. The steel is actually okay for being a Walmart knife. You can actually pick these things up all over the place, and I used the crap out of this. This is actually one of the knives that got me into carrying a knife every single day. I had this thing in my pocket when I was working an IT job where I was legit opening cardboard boxes of computers and setting them up all day. I opened thousands and thousands of boxes with this exact blade, and it's still decent. Say what you want about a $10, $15 knife, but I definitely got my money's worth out of this thing. Next up on the list, we're getting into one of my all-time favorite blades, the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. For the longest time, if you asked me, Talon, you can only have one knife for the rest of your life, what is it going to be? I probably would have said the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I love the full flat grind on this thing, I love the G10, the compression lock, everything about this knife is just awesome. The pocket clip is great, the thing feels good in my hand, great jimping, awesome finger choil. This one happens to be in S30V blade steel, and it is just a super, super good knife. A lot of people have these in their collection, and for a good reason. This is the knife that sort of opened the door into my Spyderco obsession, and I have a bunch of Spydercos in my collection, probably more than anything else actually. This next one was actually a gift from my friends at Panda Tactical. A lot of people love this blade, and for a good reason again. This is the Spyderco Rock, and a lot of people love this blade simply for the overall design of it. It has that wicked butcher's cleaver sort of look to it, and it feels pretty good in the hand, has some good jimping on the back. Of course, it does have the Spidey hole, and it does have a wire pocket clip. I'm actually a fan of these. I think they work really well. This is a liner lock design, which a lot of these knives actually are. The centering on this blade is actually still pretty decent, and the only thing that I really don't like about it is the actual finish of the blade. You may be able to see a little bit of spotting on the blade there. I tried everything that I could to keep this thing as pristine as possible since it was a gift, but after I started seeing this, I decided to just oil it up and then put it away back in my collection, and I really don't carry this thing anymore. This is still a super cool knife, and this is one that definitely will not be leaving my collection probably ever. Now moving on to another purchase I made a long time ago after I caught the Spyderco bug, the Yojimbo 2. This thing is very similar to the Paramilitary 2 as far as the materials go, G10, S30V, compression lock, same pocket clip, but the overall design of this blade is just so cool. Definitely one of the most wicked looking blades that I have. This is definitely a blade where self-defense was kept in mind when designing it. It feels good in a standard grip, it feels good in a reverse grip, and you could definitely use the crap out of this thing with that Warncliffe blade. Now that I think about it, I really don't have a whole lot of Warnies in my collection, but I definitely love this blade shape. Super useful, especially in utility tasks, slicing things open. This is a very cool knife and one that will also always be in my collection. Also along those same lines, this is another one that was a gift to me from my friends at Blade HQ, the Spyderco Para 3. Now I've done a full dedicated video on this, so if you want to check that out, the link is in the description down below. This is basically everything that I love about the Paramilitary 2, but in a smaller design. So it has the same jimping, same finger choil, everything is just scaled down a little bit. The full flat grind is great, the compression lock is also great. I love the big oversized Spidey hole. One thing that I did actually change on here was I put a Casey Lynch clip on here. That of course is blacked out just like the blade, and it carries super deep in the pocket. If you're wearing black jeans like I am, this thing basically goes invisible. After I started carrying this over the Paramilitary 2, I decided that this would actually be the knife that I could take with me if I could only have one knife. So definitely love this blade, one that is never leaving my collection because it was a gift. And thank you again to my friends at Blade HQ. Now on to the last Spyderco. You actually may have seen this one in my knife banter video. This is of course the Delica 4 in VG10 steel. This one definitely has some good wear going on to it, especially on the pocket clip there. That's from like rubbing up against skateboards and everything. This is a lockback design, so it is one of the, actually it's the only lockback design in my collection right now. The full flat grind is great. I love the jimping on all of these knives. It just feels super secure in my hand. The FRN handles are very lightweight and it just makes for a great EDC knife. If anyone is looking to get into a mid-range like $60 to $100 price point of an EDC knife, I always recommend the Delica 4. This is a great option. Now we're moving on to one that I get a ton of questions about in other videos when I have showed this in the past. I don't believe that I've done a full dedicated review of it, but that is the ZT0804CF. This has actually been one of my most carried knives, and it is a little bit on the pricier end. I believe at the time when I bought this, it was between $250 and $300 maybe. It has since been discontinued, and I'm not sure why. ZT seems to do that with a lot of their knives, but it seems to be super popular. A lot of people try to offer to buy this from me, and it just is not happening. This is a frame lock design. On the one side, it is titanium with that custom pocket clip, and then on this side, it is carbon fiber. This is a very big blade. I mean, it's like a tactical folder. It takes up a lot of room in your hand, but at the same time, it's still relatively light thanks to those material choices. I actually was not even in the market to buy one of these things, but I went into a local store and I was like, ooh, that kind of looks good. I love the all black everything type of look. The dude behind the counter handed it to me. I went like this one time, and I knew that I had to have it. The action on this thing is superb. It is super, super smooth, even on the close-up. You can see that thing just sort of falls free. You can reverse the pocket clip if that's something that you're into, if you're a lefty. This is a Rexford design. I don't know a whole lot about the blade steel that this thing is made out of, but it seems to hold a very good edge. I've only sharpened this thing maybe once. And this is another knife that I do not plan on getting rid of anytime soon. No, it's not for sale, so don't even ask. Now we're moving on to some Benchmade knives. This one you guys have seen recently in a video. This is the full-size Griptilian. This one is in 154 cm. It is a hollow ground blade. Axis lock is great. I've said a lot of good things about these knives in the past, and this one is one that will stay in my collection because it was a Christmas gift from my mother a long time ago, probably like 5-6 years ago. Here's a little look at the wear on here. A little bit of scratching on the blade. Pocket clip is a little dinged up there, but that is to be expected because this is a knife that I did carry around for a while. And then more recently, you guys may have seen a review, dedicated review on this knife right here, the Mini Griptilian. One of my friends made a cool cameo in that video, so you should definitely go check that one out if you have not already. This is a knife that I bought to test out because it is G10 now. Love G10. Deep carry pocket clip. Pocket clip is black. They're using a new blade steel on this one. This is the 20 CV blade, and so far it seems like the edge retention and everything is very good. Might be a little bit harder to sharpen, but overall it is that classic Benchmade Griptilian, great working knives. But unfortunately, this is probably one that will not stay in my collection forever. I'm just not completely sold on the size of it. I thought maybe that I would like a smaller knife, but after I got this thing in my hand and then compared it to the full-size Griptilian, I knew that this is definitely the size for me. Not saying this is not a great blade, but in the future, maybe if I have to make room in this box, I will probably end up getting rid of this for something a little bit more high end. I'm definitely trying to push my whole collection towards the higher end, maybe even some custom designs here in the future. Now we're moving on to something that you guys have seen in the past already. It is another Colonel blade. This one is the folder. I've done a full video on this one in the past, same ergonomics as the other ones. This one I definitely carried longer than the others. Since this one does fold, I was able to keep it in my pocket for a long time. It has some great utility to it. You can definitely slice open some packages. With the way that this blade is angled, it is obviously designed for punching, but you can put your finger up on the top here and slice things very easily. Here's a look at the wear. The blade is actually looking pretty good with that black coating on there. The pocket clip is a little beat up, but that is expected when this thing is in your pocket every single day. One thing that I'm not completely sold on with this is the way that it kind of locks up. You have to push this button through, and it basically pushes a liner lock on the other side across for you to close the blade. But if you have the button pressed all the way, you can't close it. So you have to press it to disengage it and then back off of it a little bit, and then it will actually close up. That is being a little bit nitpicky, but this is one of the first production ones and it's very cool to own. I love these unique blades that are really designed for a purpose. Not all of them, I shouldn't really say that. But this is definitely a very cool one to have in the collection. Now we're moving on to the Balisongs. This first one is a Bradley Kumara. This is a knife that I wanted for a very long time, and when I became friends with Zach at Blade HQ, I asked if there were any available. Unfortunately, the older ones that I really wanted were not available anymore. They were actually very hard to come by for a while, but he was able to get his hands on a first production newer Kumara, and then I was actually able to get this thing in my hands and see if I actually liked it. Did it live up to the hype? Here you can see first production run printed on the blade there. It is sort of this like sweeping leaf sort of design. It does have G10 on the handles. This thing is entirely made in the USA and it is 154 cm on the blade steel. Now I've never done a dedicated video on this knife, so I'll give you a little bit more of a rundown. The latch, it's okay. I do wish it were spring loaded. The overall design of the knife, I really do like it, but once I actually got it in my hands, I realized that it is a little bit too small for my liking. I prefer my Balisongs to have a little bit more handle length to them. It just makes it easier to do some sort of maneuvers. I'm not saying this is a bad flipper at all because I do like the weight of it. When this thing is locked up, there is absolutely no rattling at all. They do have a very nice pivot system on here. But this thing is actually pretty heavy. I was surprised when I pulled it out of the box and felt the weight of it. I could definitely see this thing being a good EDC option, although it does not have a pocket clip. But if you're used to using Balisongs, you could definitely drop this thing in your pocket because it is a relatively small size when compared to some others. And overall, it's a cool blade, but I'm not sure if this is one that will be sticking around in my collection forever. Basically, if I was never like really in love with the knife, it's probably gonna go at some point. The next Balisong on deck, you guys have seen a full dedicated video on this one, and that is the Microtech Tachyon 3. I absolutely love this knife. It has some aluminum handles. They are anodized black. This one does have a pocket clip, so I was actually carrying this thing around for a while. If I pinch the handles together, the latch is spring loaded, and it is a very strong spring, so it stays nice and out of the way when flipping. It was a little bit ridiculous to EDC this thing because as I open it up, you will see just how big this knife actually is. This is M390 steel, which is what you would expect out of a blade of this caliber. Some super wicked grinds on the top here. If you look at the spine of this blade, you will see that it has a relatively normal thickness, and then it comes down to almost another edge on the tip here. On the reverse side here, you will see that it has a production date of September of 2017. One thing that I do love about the Tachyon is the pivot system in here. They are using ball bearings, and this thing just feels unlike any other Balisong that I have. This thing is lightweight. It actually is a good flipper. I like the way that this thing feels when you're kind of flicking it around. It does use proprietary screws for the pivot system on here, but that's pretty much everything with Microtech. And after I bought this knife, this was really when I started getting into the higher end market and spending like a couple $100 on knives. I don't feel guilty about it at all because this is definitely a piece that is staying in my collection, and I sold almost 75% of everything else, so I definitely had some money to put towards these newer knives. Speaking of expensive, we're moving on to the next one that I bought with the knife money from selling everything else. This one was hard to come by. I have not done a dedicated video on it. I was on a wait list on Blade HQ for a while until one became available, and that is the Benchmade 87. There are so many good things that I could say about this knife, starting with the billet titanium handles. This thing is huge. It has a very good weight to it, obviously. I love the lines of it, and Benchmade obviously makes a very, very nice Balisong. They have a lot of different options, and this is absolutely one of my favorites coming from them. The latch, when I pinch the handles together, you may think it is spring-loaded, but that is actually thanks to a magnet inside of this little mechanism. Everything is entirely housed in there, and you can pull this out and will still have that same like flippy retention on there. That's very cool, but I will save that for the future if I ever decide to do a dedicated video on this knife. Now we have to check out this blade. Look at that thing. So I lied when I said the Yojimbo was my only Wharncliffe blade. I forgot about this one. I love the blade shape on this thing. It's just super aggressive. This thing came razor sharp out of the box, definitely popping some hairs off my arm with it. It is an S30V blade, so definitely some nice steel on there, and overall, I just really love this knife. This was one of my grail knives for the longest time, and then after I sold off a lot of those knives, I decided once it became available, I was going to buy it immediately. That's what I did, and I'm happy to have it in my collection now. By the way, the pivot system on this thing feels so good. Almost Tachyon good. Maybe better than Tachyon good, I'm not sure. But yeah, love this knife. Now we're moving on to a very unique one. I've definitely done a dedicated video on this blade before, kind of a Balisong, but also something else as well. This is the Artisan Cutlery Kinetic Tool. I'm definitely not going to go into the whole explanation about this thing, so watch that video if you want to find out what this thing is about. Like I said in the beginning, not all of these are knives, so technically this is like a tool blade. It has a couple tools on there. So this is an auto knife, a switchblade, although it's not technically a blade. But then if I pinch these handles together, it becomes a Balisong. Like I said, not going to go into detail on how this thing actually works, but it's definitely super cool. It was nice to actually meet the Artisan Cutlery guys when I was out at SHOT Show. They allowed me to take one of these things home to show you guys on video, which is why I made the video on this knife to begin with. It's got some very cool carbon fiber scales on there. Heavy knife too, actually. This thing has some good weight to it. Has a really cool locking mechanism. You guys should definitely go check out the video on this thing. Now moving on to another one that technically isn't really a knife, but it is a trainer, Balisong, and this is coming from Squid Industries. This is the Squiddy. There you can see the little squid face on there waving at you. Cool little knife. I mean, not a knife really. This thing is a trainer blade, so it is entirely made out of PVC. So this thing is super lightweight, but it actually feels really good to flip around. It makes this cool noise to it. You would think that plastic smacking against each other would kind of sound bad, but this thing actually sounds and feels really solid. There is a little bit of flex to the entire thing, but that is sort of as to be expected. There is no latch on here. It is just a simple, clean, sort of modern looking design because everything is straight lined and doesn't really have much design to it. I thought it was gonna get dirty. It actually has a nice coating on it and it has not really picked up any dirt or scratches or anything. It's still in very good condition and I've actually flipped this thing a lot. This is how I learned some of the moves that I do know. So this is a relatively inexpensive trainer. If you guys want to check them out, I will leave a link in the description down below. Maybe I'll do a full dedicated video on in the future if I decide to learn any more tricks. Now moving on, what do we have next? So we're over halfway now and I'm actually going to show these next three all together because they're all coming from the same manufacturer, and that is Browse Blades. I have done a video on these blades before, and if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link, obviously, in the playlist down below. These are all super wicked blades, probably more wicked than the Yojimbo 2, except for this one. This one is nice and tame. Out of all of them, this one is probably my favorite because it is one that I would actually use, but that definitely does not take away from the design of these two here. These were all part of a limited run series. This one happens to be number 499 out of 500. They're all using D2 for the blade steel. They all have similar pocket clips, G10 handle scales, and these all happen to be liner lock designs. They fire with authority and they look pretty scary, pretty offensive looking knives. But that is the whole thing with Browse. They make a lot of cool design blades like this. And then you have the Echelon here with the holes cut through the blade, and the G10 is obviously sort of like skeletonized on this one. This is actually definitely the most wicked blade that I own, and these were all sent to me as a gift. I had met Jason at SHOT Show, I believe. It might have been the NRA show, and I was shooting some of his pistols from Statement Defense. We were talking about knives. I guess he found out that I was a knife guy, and he sent these out for me to check out. I did a video on all of them, so if you want to check them out, like I said, link down below. This Echelon is number 286 out of 500. And then this little guy here, just a plain edge, nice and simple. This one does have a frame lock design, number 388 out of 500. This one flicks open very nicely as well. I've never actually carried or used these knives, but again, these are probably knives that will stick in my collection for a little while because they were a gift from a friend of mine and I'll always remember that. So very cool blades coming from Browse, and I appreciate the gift as always. Speaking of gifts, I have another knife that was gifted to me. This was from my friend Roger out in Las Vegas on my birthday. This has a full video done on it already here on the channel, and this is the Microtech Ultratech. I love this knife. I love everything about it. It just feels super solid. It has that Microtech name on it. This is one of those companies where if you don't own one, people think that you are just paying for the name of Microtech, but they do make a super solid out the front knife. And the Ultratech obviously sets the standard for switchblades like this. This one is still in pristine condition because, like I said, I can't really carry these in my state as of right now, but it just has awesome designs. It is super easy to carry if you are allowed to because it is nice and slim. Good ergonomics, it feels good in the hand. That latch is a little tough compared to the next out the front that I will show you, but overall, super solid knife. I was extremely stoked when I opened this thing as a gift, and this is definitely one that will remain in my collection forever. I will never get rid of this knife. So moving on to the next out the front knife that will actually be in competition with the Ultratech. It may actually surpass it in the actual out the front mechanism. That is the Guardian Tactical Recon 035. Yeah, 035. There's so many things to remember when talking about all these knives. This is of course the knife that I just most recently reviewed. It is a super solid knife. I've actually been carrying this thing around the house a little bit after I did the video on it because I just love the action on this thing. There's so many good things to say about this knife, and I hope Guardian Tactical keeps up the awesome work because I would love to see more knife designs coming from them in the future. Anyone who watched my knife banter video actually picked out this knife. Well, this and another one, the next one. This was the runner-up for the knife that you guys wanted to add to my collection. The next one, you guys added this to my collection and everyone thinks that I was salty about it. I'm definitely not salty about it in any way. This is funny, I get the meme. The actual video that I made on this knife, I made a dedicated video on this knife. I did it in a lighthearted, joking manner, and that of course is the Boker Mermaid. That's right people, I'm about to bless this video with the mythical mermaid one more time. Can you ask for a better looking blade with the beautiful mermaid up here and the bubbles through the blade? I mean, it's cutting down on weight. High speed, low drag sort of thing, right? Got her little flipper tail on there, pocket clip. This thing has not seen any pocket time. I know I said it was the end all be all EDC knife, but this thing is just too damn beautiful to carry. Look at the way the light hits that thing. Come on now. So yeah, this is a knife that is in my collection. Doesn't really fit in with the rest of the stuff here, but I'm probably going to keep it in my collection just for the memes, for the lol factor. You guys chose this. My friend Zach sent it to me as a gift, and yeah, I can't get rid of this thing. I know you probably want one. Don't even email me asking for it because it's not for sale. None of these knives are for sale unless I say so. I'm gonna tuck that beauty back into the case and we'll move on to the next one. Here's another knife that was also a gift from my friend Zach. It's awesome being friends with someone who works at a company like Blade HQ. Love Blade HQ. I bought a lot of my knives from them actually. This one is the CRKT Provoke. A lot of these knives actually stem from that knife banter video, so if you have not checked that out, I'll leave a link for it in the description down below. But yeah, this is such a wicked blade. This one actually drew blood on me before, doing what I just did right there. I was spinning this thing around before and it got stuck right in my arm and went tink right there, so don't do that. But yeah, I've done a full video on the CRKT Provoke. This is a Caldwell design. This is sort of a collaboration project between him and CRKT. Super cool pocket clip. Full video on this is in the knife playlist down below. I love this thing. The action on it just feels great. I was never really a huge karambit fan, but how can you not like something that opens like that? It's just super cool. Now the last 5 in here are not technically knives, but they do have blades on them, at least some of them. First one being this Leatherman multi-tool. This is the Leatherman rebar. I have not done a full video on this, but I actually have shown it in my EDC bag. This is actually one of the things that I keep in my little EDC Maxpedition bag inside of my normal backpack. It's got a bunch of different tools on here. Leatherman makes great products, and this is something that I never really carried with me like in my pocket every day, but it was a gift when I graduated high school a long time ago. This one, however, is not that original one. The one that I did have had some issues with it. I sent it back to Leatherman, and then they just sent me a whole new one. There were really no questions asked, and so far I've had very good experience with Leatherman, their customer service, and all of the products that they make. They definitely make some of the best multi-tools on the market out there, which is why I decided to get another one that, believe it or not, was actually in my EDC rotation for a while, but I've never really shown or told anyone this. And that is the newer Leatherman Wave Plus. Of course, I got it in all black because all black everything. Now you might be thinking, Talon, how did you carry that thing? It is just a solid, chunky piece of metal. How did it fit in your pocket? I added a pocket clip to it. That is also black. Has a saw blade on this side, a knife blade on this side, so when it is riding in my pocket, pull it out and my thumb is right on that plain edge blade. These are similar to like a liner lock design on here, so the lockup actually feels pretty decent, and these blades come wicked sharp. The one thing that I really like about the Wave Plus is how you can actually open these things from the outside. The blade is definitely the most used thing on this tool, but another super important tool for me are actually these pliers. I carried this thing around for a few weeks and I found myself using it all the time. Other than this, the only like multi-tool, if you even want to call it that I carry is the Gerber Shard. I have like 20 of those things. They are on all of the keys for all the different vehicles that I own. But once I was carrying this thing, I found myself using it more often than not. It does have some different tools in here, like a can opener and screwdriver, both a Phillips head and flathead on this side. All of these tools which actually lock out. On this side, we have a pair of scissors, which are deceptively sharp. These things can cut through pretty much anything. And then we have a bigger flathead and then also like an eyeglass type of tool in there as well. Ruler on the outside, pliers, big needle nose, has wire cutters and strippers in the middle there. There's just so much functionality that comes out of these tools, and there's a very good reason that the Leatherman Wave is one of their best sellers. As soon as I found out that they sold it in black, I knew that I had to have it, and this is actually a very nice multi-tool. That one I'm hanging on to for a while. Next up, we're moving on to one that was also sent in by a viewer. Do you want to classify this as a knife? I guess you could. This is the Giltech Ruck. Definitely gonna need to zoom in for this one. The viewer who sent this in knows me very well. It is black multicam, which I love, and it of course is a little utility blade. The blade is also in black. This is a super cool design. I did show it in that mail time video, and I've actually got a lot of use out of this thing. When I'm carrying around an expensive EDC knife and I don't want to ding up the blade because I'm like cutting up a lot of cardboard or something, I'll simply pull this out. It'll keep the sticky tape goo off of my nice blade, and then this thing is definitely a little workhorse. Giltech actually saw that video and then they reached out to me and sent me one of their newer models. This is the newer Ruck. I'm not sure if it's called a Gen 2 or what, but this is a titanium version of it. You can of course swap out the razor blade in there, and this one has a little bit more functionality to it. On the bottom here you can see that there is a little exposed cutout there to almost resemble like a seatbelt cutter. If you want to cut some twine or anything, you can just run it through there without actually taking this blade out. And then on the bottom here is a little piece of extra titanium that could be used as like a pry bar, a screwdriver, or anything like that. Oh, and of course a bottle opener, which the other one has as well. Now I actually do like the premium materials of this one, however, I really like the simplicity of this. I don't really need the other tools on there. I like the form factor of the original one without that extra functionality. It does have a bottle opener, which is nice, but for the main reason I use this thing, it's that blade on there. Again, this is coming from a company known as Giltech, and it is called the Ruck, the R-U-K. I've gotten a lot of questions on these things, so now you guys know. Now we're moving on to one that is definitely not a knife, but it is another Balisong. This is a Spyderco Balio. I'm not exactly sure why this is in this box, but it is sort of like a knife. It flips around like a normal Balisong, but of course it is a pen. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen these before. Haven't highlighted it on my channel at all, but I bought it as just sort of a fidget toy that can sit on my desk, and then I can also sign some stuff with it. And then of course that brings us down to my very last blade. You guys have seen seriously everything. My current EDC blade, which has been for a while now, the Chris Reeve Sebenza 21, Tonto, Micarta, Titanium. Love this blade, I've done a video on it, can't say enough good things about it. Now these blades definitely aren't for everyone. They are expensive, I know that, I get it. You can buy a knife like a Gerber Paraframe for 10 bucks and it is still going to cut stuff the way this thing cuts it, as long as the edges are identical. But hey, if you're not a knife guy, I'm not exactly sure how you even made it this far in the video, but if you did make it this far, chances are you are a knife guy and you know the value that these things hold. So I love this knife. If I can only take one with me forever, right now, it is definitely going to be this knife. It's still a toss-up between the Para 2 and the Para 3, but as of now, this thing has been in my pocket and I love it. Such a great knife. Now, if you guys look at my case here, you will see that that was actually only 31 knives, not 32. I have an empty slot here. I may have some more empty slots in the future if I decide to offload any of these, but for now, I can only get one more knife. And again, this is something that I'm going to let you guys pick. Let me know what I should fill this slot with right here, and then I will take your top choice, buy it, make a review on it, and then I will let you guys know what I think about it. Now I know the #1 selection is not going to top the Boker Mermaid, so yeah, we'll just see what you guys pick. Hopefully you have my best interests in mind. And yeah, I'm excited to hear what you guys think of this collection. Let me know if you have any questions. It's gonna be really hard to answer because I gave you a ton of information. I'm going to try to leave any relevant links in the description down below. And like I said, let me know what my collection is missing. What should my next knife be? Because as of now, that is limiting my collection. I got this seahorse case for the purpose of not hoarding knives. Once this thing gets full, I will have to get rid of some of the other ones, so this is sort of like an ever-evolving collection. Once this thing changes to an extent where most of the knives are mainstays, then I will probably do another update video. Might not be for another year, year and a half, 2 years, who knows. But hopefully this video satisfied your needs for my knife collection update. There will still be some reviews coming out here in the future. I do have some more knives coming in, probably over the next couple of months, and I will be offloading some of these. Some of them have not had dedicated reviews, but I still want to do dedicated reviews on them, like the Benchmade 87. Love this knife, if I haven't said that enough already. So yeah, hopefully you guys dig this knife content, and that's it for today. Man, that was a lot of talking. A lot of people are going to ask to see my gun collection too, so maybe if this video gets like 1 million likes, then I'll do a gun collection video. 1 million likes, that's a lot. That's a lot of likes. Anyway, if you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I do make new videos every week, and there's a lot more cool stuff coming on the way. So thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.